Okay, so we should be recording. Hopefully that works. I've actually never recorded a Zoom meeting. This is a first time for me, so how wonderful that we're still in a pandemic and I can still have this experience of recording a Zoom meeting. So thank you so much to all of you for being here for this study abroad in SPREES meeting. I'm so glad to see our students, Mira and Eve and Maddie and Jordan and Lee and Lois and Jonah. I'm so glad that Lois and Jonah are here to share about their study abroad experiences. I'm so glad that Dr. Planton and Dr. Denner are here with me doing this event. Yay. So let me just tell you really quickly what we're going to do in the next hour. First of all, you're going to see a PowerPoint with quotes from us about why you should study abroad. Then you're going to hear from a study abroad professional and a professional in the field on why you should study abroad. Then you're going to hear a list of all of the former Stetson students who have studied abroad. Then you're going to hear from students about why you should study abroad. Then you're going to hear from Paula Hentz at World about how you study abroad. And then finally, we'll be able to answer questions. So hopefully you will be convinced to study abroad if you aren't already, and at least feel a bit more like you have a pathway to kind of seeing how that's going to happen for yourself at the end of this meeting. So let me start with sharing my little PowerPoint I made last night. Wonderful. So this is why you should study abroad. So I asked the SPREES faculty to come up with why you should study abroad, and this is what we have. So Dr. Jelte Ukhba, true to form, a language teacher, reminds us that you will not reach B2 without a semester abroad, right? It just won't happen. Your language won't get there. Dr. Blackwell says, the daily struggles involved with getting things done and meeting new people also give you a new sense of resilience and accomplishment. These processes help you gain skills which will make you very different from the overwhelming number of your peers also coming of age back in the United States. In other words, this will differentiate you. Your resume will stand out, your bio will stand out, you will get things and have doors opened for you because you studied abroad. Dr. Denner says, succinct as always, you should study abroad because you will have hundreds of fascinating conversations, some of them in Russian, and it's true. Dr. Fowler says, it will open doors, it will change your life. In 20 years, you will realize this is what set you on your path. And I'm going to give you two examples. So we'll start with youthful Dr. Fowler, studying acting at the Moscow Art Theater in 1995. This is me on the roof of the Moscow Art Theater with my study abroad cohort studying acting at the Moscow Art Theater. Lots of stories. 20 years later, visiting Moscow Art Theater as theater historian and professor. So you can see in the space of 20 years, right, from being a study abroad student to actually being a professional. And here we have youthful Dr. Planton in 2009 in Irkutsk on her study abroad semester, which was an SRIS semester in Irkutsk. So exactly what we want you to do, she did, and it transformed her life. She says here, I studied abroad as an undergraduate during my junior spring semester, which you can do too, with SRIS in Irkutsk, where I also interned for a Russian environmental NGO. The experience informed my undergraduate senior thesis, helped me gain a full scholarship for an MA in Russian studies, and afforded me the foundational language skills and in-country experience necessary to carry out my Russia-based field research while pursuing a PhD in political science. Without it, I can honestly say I wouldn't have ended up where I am today. And I think all of your faculty, all of your professors, we can all make that exact same statement. We have a couple pictures of SPREES students here. We have Sean Karamani in St. Petersburg, Neri Ordaz in Nizhny Novgorod, and Stetsonians in Moscow on the right, and the mountains of Kyrgyzstan on the left. So you are in great company, a long history of Stetson students studying abroad. We are promoting two options for study abroad. On the left, we have some students in and alumni in Bishkek. So we have an exchange agreement with the American University of Central Asia. You will be an international student there. Like we have international students at Stetson, you'll be an international student at American University of Central Asia. This is what Lois did, and this is what Jordan is planning to do in the fall. The other option is SRIS, which we've been promoting a lot with you guys. They have programs, so that you won't be just an international exchange student, you'll be on a program studying language more intensively with sort of planned excursions in a cohort with a homestay in St. Petersburg, Moscow, Kiev, Vladivostok, Irkutsk, or a multi-country program. For Paula and for us and for Stetson, these are sort of two different options. For you, they're similar in that they are exchange programs. Your financial aid, what you pay Stetson is the same. It's like you're at Stetson, except you're in Vladivostok, right? So it's very easy for you. You continue as if you're a Stetson student, but you're in a different place and your credits roll back with no problem. Very quickly, I just want to go over some funding options, and we can talk about this again in the Q&A. These are all contingent on Stetson saying you can study abroad, right? They have to sort of work with State Department, and I'm sure Paula will talk about this as well. But we have three: the Knight Fund, rolling applications up to $1,000. Like all awards, requires a 2-page application essay and CV plus a statement on return. The Diane Disney Scholarship is exclusively for Russian language study. That's $2,500. Potentially applications due April 15th, depending on when we hear the final word from Stetson. And the Denner Greer, also rolling applications up to $750 for research or language study in the United States. So again, we'll come back to this, but I want to sort of give you a sense of there's these two options: American University of Central Asia, SRAS. We're pushing the semester. We have options to help you do that. And now we're going to hear from a study abroad professional, Renee Hughes, who runs SRAS. And she, with Dr. Denner, has made a video, and I have just made Dr. Denner the co-host. And so he can show this video, which hopefully he will do since he's a banana. Okay, great. Okay, great. We can't hear the volume. Is it just me?
I think you might have to unshare the screen, stop sharing, and then when you share again, you have to click. There's a little like thing.
Yeah, you click share with sound. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So stop sharing. And then click share. And then before clicking on the little box, click share with sound and like whatever that is. Yeah.
I think it's all because I was muted. Let's try this again.
Okay.
Share screen. Oh, okay. And share. And maybe this works. Can you hear it? Business cycles,
yes.
Business life in
Go back to the
Russian
beginning.
Federation and in the SPREES area. So basically, she's seen 25 years of the business cycles, business life in the Russian Federation and in the SPREES area more broadly. And so I wanted to ask you today, Renee, if you'd say a few words about how aptitude in Russian figures into the careers of people working, of expats, of citizens of the U.S. working in Russia and more broadly in the SPREES area.
My background is probably may or may not be as exotic as many of those who found their career related to Russia, but I grew up in Minnesota, or western Minneapolis, and kind of blew through all the Spanish and German options available to me at that time, and wanted to study a bit of Russian. And actually, had been at the AFS meeting where they were recruiting, and of course, in our neck of the woods, everybody goes to Sweden and Norway. And I sort of raised my hand and said, I'd like to go through the USSR. And at which point they looked at me and said, you can't do that, which is exactly the wrong thing to say to me. And so I went and bought myself a little penguin book of Russian, went to my local library, got some photographs, that dates me right there, listened to those, and every bit that I could. I looked like a little spy in training in my bedroom growing up. So that's, took me to college, where I actually studied engineering, which if you think it's difficult now trying to study abroad as an engineer, try it back then. I think there was maybe one option for something in Sweden, I think maybe in English for engineers. But I did manage to sneak in some Russian, and the first opportunity I could take was right after graduation to jump on a program for 2 months in Moscow. Like most study abroad experiences, that changes your life. You meet some people, you see what you can do and what you want them to not do. Right at the moment in time of engineering as a recession, 1990 recession, which of course affected engineers because it was the end of the Cold War. So our thoughts, in our field, I could either sit and push papers at the VA or something like this, or I could just go do something else. So I chose to do something else and return to Russia eventually after getting a little bit of experience in the translation world. So what I saw was sort of a trajectory over many years now, 25 years at least. Well, more, SOES is 25, so I figure at least 30 years of time spent in that region and seeing the cycles of what young people can and cannot do in the region. And while we had a period of the crazy cowboy days of the 90s where if you walked on 2 legs, you could breathe and you spoke English and you knew a little bit of Russian, you suddenly found yourself like the VP of marketing or something like this in an area where admittedly Russians didn't have experience yet. So a lot of that was happening. But then, what happens is you hit a couple of financial crises, and all along this way, the Russians themselves were gaining education and exposure, and they're perfectly capable right now of covering just about every position that needs to be covered within Russia, albeit we still have some crazy American entrepreneurs still doing things. But the net result is that the job market really has shifted in a way where you're not going to necessarily just land there and suddenly find an entry-level job or any sort of job easily without having qualifications. And so those qualifications are twofold. It's having some experience in practical applications, whether it's in economics, political science, any area like this, but also relative fluency of the Russian language. Enough Russians speak English at this point where you need to keep pace and speak Russian well. And well, on one hand, I would say that any experience that you can get traveling abroad into that region it's all valuable. I don't care if you can get a week snuck in somewhere over spring break. Every little piece is another experience, another thing to see. If you plan well, you can learn a lot. But to actually achieve a level of fluency, it's more than just a classroom. It's an extended period of time, not only in a teaching situation in a Russian-speaking country, but it's what that extended period of time allows you. It allows you the additional exposure over, say, a semester period of time to meet those Russian friends, because that's where you're going to learn the Russian language. It's in all the conversations that you have with now some very good friends that you spend your evenings with. You may even end up, living with them at some point, hanging out. And that unfortunately doesn't happen usually in a 1 week experience or 2 weeks here or there in the country. It's something that's built up over a longer period of time. And I think that's really the biggest part of what a long-term study abroad experience can bring to you is the connections. As Michael mentioned, I have a lot of experience with some other businesses I was involved with in a consulting firm. And it's funny because when one of the first crises hit in August of '98, everything happens in August in Russia, and we had this scratching our head moment. At the time, we were more involved with the financial markets, and we're like, okay, what do we do? We're expats, at least some of us were. We could leave, we could go somewhere else, try to make our fortunes in some other country, maybe ideally a warmer one, with nice beaches and cocktails, things like this. But after thinking about it, we realized it. And this is important too, it's not only about the language. We had spent years building up business and social infrastructure that would help us to navigate whatever it was we wanted to do. And that really is what we're trying to replicate in any other place that we would go. Just building up the local knowledge, how things work, how they don't work, the psychology of the people. A network of people you can turn to for how do I get this done. So many of these countries are about, we hear this all the time, and less about structure and rule of law, it's about who you know. And it really is, because your first thought in a place like Russia when you don't know how to do something is, who do I know, who knows somebody, who knows somebody, who knows somebody who can help me get this done. So it's really imperative to build up that network, which is what takes time. So we stuck it out, which was the right choice because all of our competition left, leaving us there with, in a fairly good position and the knowledge that we've accumulated. And I think that's really the key is to again, take whatever opportunity you can to visit other places, you know, to get around Russia, to get around the Russian-speaking part of the world, but make sure to also fit in a solid chunk of time to really build a network, build an infrastructure, and build the language skills that can only happen over an extended period.
I have a question, Renee. So you studied Russian, you speak Russian, 25 years working with educational establishments. What's the best way to improve fluency in Russian?
I hate to say the first thing that comes to mind because it's usually said by the male half of the population, which is to find yourself a Russian girl.
Yeah.
That's one guy used to call it, to translate into English, a dictionary in a skirt. But that's, you know, we find these sort of things in Russia. But that is the key. I mean, not exactly that key, but yeah, the minute you have the time to make some really good friends that you suddenly just have regular conversations with, you're going out with them, talking about things that are not just textbook conversations, that's suddenly where your language develops in leaps and bounds in terms of the casual conversation where you pick up for good or for bad, because you do want to sort of pick your friends a little bit because you will pick up their speaking habits.
Yeah.
So you start noticing they use their same crutch words, some of their same slang. So sometimes to a certain yeah, exactly. That's something it's fun to observe that though when that happens, because you realize that, well, I'm getting so comfortable with this that I'm picking up speech patterns to a degree. But you just want to make sure whose speech patterns you're picking up.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's interesting how stratified or local knowledge is. And I was just talking with a friend, and I'm far more comfortable analyzing and discussing futurist poetry than I am talking about movies or whatever, because that's me, right? I mean, that's the people I know who speak Russian. When I talk with them, I talk about like literature and music and art, very very and I actually have that's far easier for me than to talk about I don't know who won the latest football game, but your network really matters.
I'm very comfortable. For example, I mean, I've slipped away a little bit from it now, but reading contracts or speaking of contracts or terms and giving a history text or even a children's book. And I start tripping up over it. So it's really is, and I think this also plays well to, one of the other benefits of a longer period of study abroad is that we suggest, really encourage this of all students, which is to get involved with the things you normally are involved with back at home. If you like to lift weights, do yoga, play baseball, play hockey, sing in a choir, whatever it is, this is the easiest way to develop relationships and the language related to the things you enjoy doing already. So I think this is the key.
The people you know matter.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Renee, for talking to us a little bit about studying Russian, learning Russian, and its importance for anybody seeking a career.
So that ended a little abruptly, but I think we can continue the sentence. The important thing for anyone learning Russian seeking a career is to really do a semester abroad, right? I hope you guys all got that from Renee's talk, that this isn't something you can just pick up in a week. You really have to spend time there developing relationships and developing friendships and having those late night conversations with a new friend, and you're struggling in the language, but those struggles really help you actually learn it and be able to use it in your job, right? You cannot use Russian in your job if you just stay at home. I promise you, it just won't happen. You really have to have that study abroad experience. And now we're going to turn to Jonah and Lois, who will tell us about their experiences. Do you guys have one PowerPoint? Okay, which one of you wants to do it?
I can share my screen.
Okay, Lois, I'm going to co-host you. Okay. Great. And I will de-co-host Dr. Denner.
All right. Do you guys see an actual PowerPoint?
Now we do.
Here?
Yes.
Awesome. Love it. Do you guys see the PowerPoint itself, or
We
like
see like we see like your like next slide, like maybe use slideshow.
about this?
No, like that. Like that's
Awesome.
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right, so hello everyone. I'm Lois, and with me is Jonah. I went to Kyrgyzstan, and Jonah went to Ukraine. So, Jonah, tell us a little bit about where you went and when you went.
So I went to Kiev, which I believe is actually misspelled on that slide, but yeah.
But I appreciate the attempt to use the Y. I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. There's only one correct way to spell
It is.
Kiev. So I went in spring 2020 before COVID was a thing. I got there in late January and evacuated by mid-March. We're 18, 19, 3 days away from my 1-year anniversary of having to flee the country. But it was a lot of fun either way. But the program was supposed to take you from Kiev, Ukraine to Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, and Russia. I only made it to Ukraine and Moldova. But the full program is a lot more fun, so I hear.
And I spent a semester in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. I had my own apartment with a friend, and we went to the American University of Central Asia for the entire time. So I took classes just like anyone else, took some Russian classes, and that was great. But I was also there to take some history classes, poli-sci classes, and things like that. And just a quick reminder, Kyrgyzstan is right next to China. It's underneath Kazakhstan, which is underneath Russia. And Jonah, where is Ukraine?
And Ukraine is next to Poland, under Belarus, next to Russia, next to Moldova on the Black Sea. Yes. It's in Europe.
So before going to Kyrgyzstan, when I was signing up for all of this, I honestly learned that it was an option, and I was hoping to go on a study abroad anyways. So I figured, why not go to Kyrgyzstan? I initially thought of, going to Ukraine and Kyrgyzstan in 2 different semesters. And I unfortunately had Ukraine cut short. And the fact that I never went because of COVID. But I am so happy that I got to go to Bishkek. There are a lot of challenges that really come with living independently in a developing country. A lot of those are really those external roadblocks, like figuring out how to pay your bills, renewing your visa, or really finding your way around a city without GPS. But you have people there to help you and support you through all of that. I think the things that I was definitely most grateful for were those challenges that really help shape your perceptions of yourself and the country you're in, right? So things like redefining my understanding of countless topics, building a community without a common language, and things like that, right? I think that it sounds really cheesy, but during your time abroad, you really do learn as much about yourself as you do about the place you're in. So while I was in Bishkek, we got to do as many of the eat, pray, love things as I wanted to. That includes skiing on former Soviet Olympic hills as a non-skier, hiking outside of, AUCA, the school I was at, on the desert steppe. That definitely wasn't the safest thing in the world, but it was really fun. Also things like seeing Buddhist shrines from the Silk Road. This was actually at a hot spring, just kind of out in someone's backyard. But it was replacarded with gold, and it was really cool. On the other side of the boulder was a similar inscription of Stalin. Just interesting tidbit. But but daily life really does come down to the same stuff. You know, you get your groceries at a bazaar, you do your laundry and the same stuff. It all really boils down to the experience you have along the way with the people that you interact with, right? Really anything from playing soccer outside with people who have zero common language and like are really just kind of shouting out whatever they want, to things like, you know, going on hikes with everyone. And that's me tasting camel milk for the first time. I don't recommend it, but like it's better than horse milk. So I definitely recommend it. I learned a lot about myself and definitely a lot about hiking on random afternoons. It was great.
So yes, I have to agree with Lois. I know it sounds really cheesy, but you do like learn a lot about yourself when you're thrown into study abroad, and then when you're thrown into a chaotic situation of trying to evacuate, like you learn a lot about yourself. But going to Kiev, I didn't know what I was expecting. I initially talked to Paula about studying abroad in London for a semester. And then I met with Dr. Fowler, and she was like, no, you're going to Kiev. So I signed up for this program. It sounded fun. Renee had told me like, there's like 3 other students, and then you're gonna be there with a cohort of West Point cadets. And I'm like, well, we'll be safe. We'll be totally fine. So, you know, yes, this is the policy in conflict. Sorry, forgot to mention. But you know, going into this, I had no idea what I was walking into. And then I landed in Kiev and I was like, it's all grain. Like literally I landed in the airport. It's like 30 minutes outside the city and there's just grain everywhere. And then we're driving in and my driver didn't speak any Russian. And mind you, I've only done 1 semester of Russian. Or no, he only spoke Russian. I had no Russian. I was panicking. Then I got there. My host family didn't speak any Russian. I was crying in my room, emailing Dr.
English.
Fowler.
They didn't speak English.
Yes. Sorry, it's been a long day. They didn't speak any English. I came to find out later that they did. They just didn't tell me. But I was crying in my room and I emailed Dr. Fowler and I'm like, why did I do this? Like, what? And she's like, go out of your room and go eat with your family. And I sat there and I'm like, gave them a box of saltwater taffy and I'm like, here you go. Like, thanks for having me. But you know, it's forcing yourself to get out of your comfort zone that really builds your character, forces you to learn Russian. It's you know, it is what the study abroad is all about. This picture is at the Lavra, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, with beautiful churches. I'm pretty sure I was in the bell tower when I took that picture. Yeah, so then Lois asked me what's a quote that sums up my time there, and it's adapt, improvise, and overcome. Just because, you know, COVID and trying to figure out that mess, but even without COVID, it was still like, okay, I got sick, for example. I'm like, okay, how do I find a hospital here? What do I do? You know, it's like everyday situations where it's just, you need to like adapt very quickly. And this lovely picture, this was the last time I got to see my language partner before I evacuated. His name is Glosha. We still talk like weekly. To Dr. Denner and Renee's point, you really make friends. You got to make friends. Like I met Losha and I learned so much slang, and I did pick up his like, I don't even know what to call it, but he'll randomly just say stop in the middle of like a conversation to get me to stop like with my thought, and he throws something in. So now like when I'm in a conversation with like Russian speakers, I'll just say stop, you know, like stop, what do you say? So you know, but you do make friends. SRAS forces you to make friends. It's nice. So some of the sites I got to see. So Zoloty Vorota, it's the replica of the Golden Gate of Kiev. And I passed it every morning on my way to school. It's just a nice little gate. It's kind of like a pathetic little museum, but it's like, it's cute. It's cute. Sorry, I'm so taken back. I had Leah like help us make this presentation, and I'm like, Prechursk? What? Leah? That is the Motherland Statue, which is just a huge Soviet monument to like the victory of World War II. And the World War II Museum is housed in the base. And then of course I was in Ukraine, so I had to go take a trip to Chernobyl. So we took a weekend trip out there and went on like a guided tour of the Chernobyl disaster area. And that's my picture of reactor 4 and the iron sarcophagus over it. Yeah, so I highly recommend study abroad. It's very fun. It is a life-changing event. I hate to be that cliche person that's like, I studied abroad and it changed my life, but it did. So do it.
And again, just to kind of like wrap it up, it really is life-changing. And like you hear that from so many people and you think like, how can it be that cheesy? And how can it like really change your life that much? But I think that a lot of us in this Zoom can really kind of comment on the fact that like one of the main comments you get when you tell people you're studying abroad comes from people from all ages, whether you've just graduated or you've had, you know, you've been retired for like 20 years. And it's, you know, after asking where Kyrgyzstan is, it's typically, oh my gosh, I wish that I studied abroad. Like, I wish that I did that. And it really does not matter if you've been out of school for like 50, 60 years. Like, everyone comments that if they didn't do it. And it really does define your perceptions of so many things and open so many doors. And you guys are going to love it.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys, so much. Let's have some applause for Lois and Jonah. Thank you so much. Lois, you can stop screen sharing. I just want to follow up on something that these guys just said. So they are, you know, the latest in a line of Stetsonians who have done study abroad. And since 2004, when we started working with SRAS, 66 students from Stetson have done study abroad, largely semesters abroad through SRAS. And I just want to read you real quick. Dr. Denner and I were able to come up with what about 20 or 30 of these guys are doing. So these are graduates of Stetson since 2004 who studied abroad. Let me just read you what they're up to. Jessica Auer, PhD labor history, Duke. Patrick Bradley, working for No Kid Hungry and not-for-profit in DC. Kristen Blaylock is making a film about Syrian women refugees in Turkey. Hannah Chapman, assistant professor, political science, Miami U, Ohio. Maxwell Drosnin, medical school at UCF. Tiffany Chestnut, working in administration at UCF. Megan Duffy, working for a 3-letter agency in DC. Letty Flowers, English teacher and novelist living in Moscow. Christine Jacobson, MA Harvard, MLS Simmons, currently a librarian at Houghton Library, Harvard. Chris Johnson, Army Intelligence. Sean Karamani, Peace Corps, applying to political science graduate school. Stratton Curtin, works for defense contractor in DC. Kristen Kaleda, emergency management in South Carolina, teaching at Columbia College after a PhD in global emergencies. Samantha Lang, PhD political science, University of Iowa. Claire Locker, DC think tank. Lindsay McGrath, PhD political science, London School of Economics. Neri Ordaz, MA in data analytics, Higher School of Economics, Moscow. Andre Pemberton, working in cybersecurity. Georgia Peters, MA in Central Asian Politics, University of Indiana. Amanda Price, MD, Johns Hopkins. Kelly Radis, teaching in Bishkek. Paul Radenhausen, teaching in Bishkek. Rebecca Schaffer, working for the DNC in Pennsylvania. Josh Solomon, getting a master's at George Washington University in the Russian policy think tank world in DC. Christina Templeton Chin, working for AIR Guatemala in Atlanta. Billy Ventimiglia, MA in urban planning, working at FSU. Bimini Wright, actress in NYC. Kate Wright, JD, Georgetown, environmental rights lawyer in Alaska. So this is just to tell you that these are students who are alumni of Stetson, who are, as we say, living lives of significance, right? And a lot of them, and I know because I've talked to them personally, directly relate what they're doing now to their semester abroad, right? And those experiences that they had. So right now I'd like to turn it over to Paula Hens, who will tell us a little bit about the specifics of how you do this transformational experience. Paula, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love coming to these because I don't always get to hear from students when they come back. I see before you leave, and I answer the questions, and I see the anxiety and the question and everything, you know. But it's fun to see you all when you come back and hear the experiences that you had and how much like you've changed through that period. Because I agree, it is life changing, and I also think I'm glad that you talked about the hard parts too, because I think that that's the part that sometimes gets left out. There's this talk about like study abroad is amazing, it's going to be the best thing ever, and it will be, I promise. But it's also really hard at moments. There are really challenging parts. Adjusting to a whole new country, a whole new culture can be really tough, and there are going to be moments where you're going to just want to like curl up in a ball and go home. But you get through those, and then it's like, I can do this, right? Like that independence, that confidence, that just everything that kind of comes with going through it, and then finding your friends and finding your place. It really is just the most rewarding and worthwhile experience. So I hope you all go. And honestly, this is the time to go. You're all students. This is built in. You can go abroad. You can take classes towards your major. I mean, it's going to be hard. I mean, some of you might get jobs where you get to move abroad someday, but not everyone will. And so this is the time when you can just pick up and spend 4 months in another country. It's easier to get a visa as a student. You can stay on track. You can do this in a way that's more affordable, because if you do the exchange, you are paying your normal Stetson tuition, you're keeping all of your financial aid, and you get to apply it to your semester abroad, which is kind of a nice opportunity. So if you can afford to be at Stetson for the semester, you can afford to study abroad for a semester. And the other thing too is when you're looking at locations in the SPREES major, like when you're looking at Russia, Ukraine, Kyrgyzstan, these are places that are more affordable really than being at Stetson. So instead of paying Stetson for room and board, you're paying SRES for room and board, or you're paying in Kyrgyzstan, right? You're paying for room and board over there. And that's a lot cheaper than living on campus. Like living on campus, so like an average is like $4,000. It's way less for you to go abroad and spend that money. And then you have extra money then to travel and explore while you're over there. So definitely go, definitely do this. I'm going to put a link in the chat, which is our website, and specifically goes to our study abroad page. Actually, if you go to it, you'll see a picture of Lois on there. So it's Lois and Ashley. Yeah, you didn't know, right? You all submit these photos for the study abroad photo contest, right? And then we get to keep them. So our whole website now has pictures of study abroad students. These are all our students on various programs. So you'll see Lois and Ashley snowboarding in Kyrgyzstan on that page. But this right here will tell you some information about studying abroad, some stuff that you've heard today, the benefits. But if you go on the left-hand side too, you'll also see a link to exchange programs and a link to faculty-led programs. If you can't go abroad for a whole semester, and I hope you can, because honestly, like the language that you'll gain from it, like it's better if you can go for a whole semester, but not everyone can, and we understand that. There are short-term programs. Dr. Blackwell, he was going to lead a program this summer, but unfortunately with COVID, obviously couldn't do that. So next summer he will be offering that. It's called like Winds of Change, and it's going to take place in Russia, Poland, Ukraine, and I think Germany as well. So it's a traveling program. Also, he's doing this in coordination with SRES, so it'll be both Stetson and SRES kind of collaborating and doing the summer program. So if you're thinking like, I want to go abroad, but a whole semester seems scary, then consider the short-term option. But then on this page, you'll see like the links. If you go to exchange programs, you'll see all of our exchange options, and you'll see both outside the American University of Central Asia, which I changed my background because I realized that I was like, for this event, I should do something more SPREES related. So this is a picture of the university from when we went. So they went with Dr. Fowler and Dr. Denner a couple of years ago to check out Kyrgyzstan. So you can click on that to get more information and also apply. And then also if you scroll down, you'll see the School of Russian and Asian Studies, which is SRES, and that's lots of programs. Like you've heard about Ukraine, but there's multiple programs to pick from in Ukraine, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Poland, so many options there. And you would apply through this website. And if you want to go abroad in the spring, the application is due in September. if you want to go abroad in the fall, the application is due at the end of February. So we actually just sent out this week, we sent out the acceptances for the fall semester. So you apply here. The exchange application is a little bit more intense than the short-term program ones. We will ask for things like language recommendation, if you're going to do a language program, character reference, and academics. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to fill out the application, because it's not something that you can just do in a couple hours and submit it all. The other thing that you have to do is you have to get your courses pre-approved, which for SPREES is a little bit easier. If you're planning to get all SPREES credits, you can just go talk to Dr. Fowler and you can, you know, figure that out with her, because she's familiar with the programs. But it is good to do that, because then you know exactly what you have to take abroad and how it's going to come back to Stetson, and to make sure that you're staying on track towards graduation, because that's really important. Anything that you do abroad on an exchange program does come back and it counts as Stetson in residence credits. So it looks like you're taking it on campus, and it also counts towards your GPA. So because of that, we want you to remember that it is study abroad, right? Like, I want you to go and have fun and explore and travel, but don't forget to study, because your grades do come back, okay? So make sure that you are making time for both. The other thing that I want to mention, in addition to the scholarships that Dr. Fowler mentioned at the beginning, there's also a world scholarship that you should all apply for as well. And so we have 2 deadlines for that, one in October and one in February. And that is anywhere from like $500 to like $3,000, depending on the quality of your application and also your financial need. So we look at both of those things. So definitely apply for that as well if you're worried about funding. On the link that I sent you all with our study abroad page, you'll also see on the left-hand side, it'll have a link that says affording study abroad. And that has a ton of links to various scholarships, both the Stetson scholarship, the World Scholarship, but also external ones. So if you are a first-gen student, for instance, you should apply for the Gilman Scholarship. If you are looking at a language program, there's critical language scholarships. There's a ton of different kind of external, like national scholarships that you can apply for. And a lot of them are linked on this page. So definitely check that out too, in terms of affording it. I think those are the main things in terms of how to apply and when to apply. But if you have other questions, you should reach out to and set up an appointment. We are doing Zoom meetings and Calendly, so you can actually schedule your own appointment. I'll put that information into the chat. But also, obviously, Dr. Fowler, Dr. Denner are great resources too, any of your faculty in the SPREES program. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paula. So just to highlight really quickly, for those of you thinking of studying abroad in spring, and I know that's Eve and Lee, potentially, that October World Scholarship deadline is going to be important. And we'll remind you, but just sort of to put that in your head. So now would be the time for you guys to ask any questions, things you want us to go over. If you want to ask some of the students about more of their experiences, if you want to ask Paula anything, if you want to ask any of us anything, this is your time to ask questions.
I'll ask a question, Dr. Fowler.
Oh, okay, Dr. Denner.
One of the most common problems that we have to deal with students studying abroad is students who want to earn credits towards their major, and it's not always SPREES. And so they want to earn credit towards their major in political science or in history. What in the way of study abroad programs does SPREES offer that might help them out?
That's a great question, Dr. Denner. Thank you so much for asking. So I would say there's a couple ways to approach this question. One is, as I hope we have convinced and brainwashed you, study abroad is really important, and it is really, I think Lois was right, like people always say, oh, I wish I'd studied abroad. It really is a game changer for you. In other words, it's more important that you have that study abroad experience and also, frankly, those language skills than that you, I don't want to say that then complete your major. Of course, you have to complete your major, but the driver of making this happen for you should be how can I, keeping my major, how can I make study abroad happen? Not, oh, I can't study abroad because of my major, right? So we really want to work with you to make that happen. And one thing you can do is you can try to take courses that will count towards your major while you're abroad. That can be difficult because a lot of times if you're on a language program, you're on a language program. And that's what you should be working on, and that's what you're doing. Or you're doing the course that, for example, Jonah did, the policy and conflict course, which has, it's sort of half language and then half, there's 2 content courses, and we transfer those back as SPREES electives. So for those of you who are SPREES majors, it's really great. And one thing I would say, actually, I mean, a lot of you are SPREES majors, but for those of you who aren't, this is one of the great things about our major is, if you remember what Renee said, what was important was not only language, but like area studies knowledge, like how to deal knowledge, how you work in a country knowledge. And she's talked before about, because she runs this organization about hiring people, and how she only hires people who've lived abroad, because it's not just about like speaking good Russian. It's about like, how do I know how to deal with abroad life, and how do I have the historical and the political and the cultural context to maneuver in this place. And that's what we give you in the SPREES major. So this is very easy to transfer credits back. If you're working with another major, it might be a little bit more difficult, but we can generally work with it, and it's generally not a dream killer for study abroad, right? Unless you have some very specific weird business major, then maybe that might be difficult. But with most majors in the college, it really should be doable. It really, really should be. That should not be a driver for you not to study abroad. Will study abroad be possible this summer? Great question. So there's 2 answers to that. The first is region specific, which is Russia's still closed to foreigners. And obviously in the pandemic, borders and abilities to travel is a global problem, and it's a problem for Russia. So Russia's not accepting foreigners, they're not giving visas. There is all signs point to that changing by fall. So Jonah's planning on studying abroad in Moscow in fall. I have every confidence it's going to happen, right? By the time we're in March now, by September, he's going to be there. But right now in June, I don't know that people can be going, that Americans can be going to Russia, right? So SRAS is running programs for sure in Kiev and in Bishkek. And those are programs, they're planning on running those programs. Those countries are open. Renee feels confident that in July, for a July start date, probably they will be able to run. The other issue though is Stetson, and whether Stetson is, I don't know what the verb is, Paula, like approving or like approving study abroad. So if Stetson doesn't approve study abroad, and we had one student last year who I think did something in fall. Dr. Zheltukova is not here, but this was her student. But if Stetson is not approving, then you're kind of on your own, right? But if Stetson approves and allows study abroad, then you're available. You can use these scholarships and your financial aid and use that for a summer program. But if Stetson doesn't allow that, then you can't do that. So right now, I'm kind of giving you we're in a holding pattern answer. I have every confidence as soon as Paula knows anything, she'll let us know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Dr. Planton is saying she has a friend, right, who's able to travel back to Moscow this month. I know a couple people who've had that, like the specialist visas, like the, whatever that's called, the specialist visa, right? And they've been able to go. I think and I do think that's a sign that for students, probably by fall, yeah, you're gonna be able to go. But by summer, by June, I don't know. Which is another reason to think about a semester abroad, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Students with additional medical needs. Great, Mira. That's a great question. That is something that Paula works with a lot, and that SRES works with a lot. And that is an individual conversation about an individual program and an individual location, right? So that's not something we can give a blanket answer to. This is not an easy region, right? This is not a region that is incredibly open to people who are different, despite the fact that it is deeply defined by difference. This is a place where it has been hard to have disabilities. This is a place where sometimes, the ways that we move about in the United States and sort of take as normal are not normal over there, which is, on the one hand, I think a big learning, a learning opportunity, right? That the world works in different ways and societies are managed in different ways and politics works in different ways. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't go. It just means you might want to have some conversations about what program is going to be best and sort of take some steps to set up a proper support network for yourself when you're in country. So that would be my answer to you. Lois.
If I could actually add on to that really quick too, as far as diets go,
Yes.
it is absolutely not impossible to be vegetarian or even vegan in a place like Kyrgyzstan. It does take a lot of planning. I know of someone who went to Bishkek who is vegan, who like planned all of her meals and was still able to go out sometimes and have like the bread, but like it really is possible. I would definitely do some research, but it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Dr. Denner is pointing out that although they take their meat seriously, there's postmortem menu, which is the what's the word, fasting menu, right? So you can figure this out. Jonah.
I will say it's very hard to be gluten-free in Ukraine. My host family only fed me potatoes. Like that was it. So be prepared. If you're gluten-free, you're going to eat a lot of potatoes.
Yeah, I think there's some, again, I mean, Paula referred to, like, thank you guys for mentioning the hard stuff. Again, this is not the United States. You're not staying home. You're going to a really different culture and a really different place with different mores and values and things in the grocery store. And that's one of the wonderful things, actually, about it. But of course, it will have some challenges. Everyone in the Intro to SPREES class, I think, last year heard my story of food poisoning in Kiev from the meat salad that I decided would be appropriate. But purchased at a metro station. Yeah. Lois, yes.
I think on like kind of the lighter side of things, as far as experiences go, I think the best memories that you have and the ones that add a lot of depth to your experience and your study abroad are the ones that seem really hard in the moment, but you look back and it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I did that. Like I did ski down a double black diamond hill with 0 ski experience. I fell down that cliff, but like, yeah, it was really fun. But it's all worth it when you find yourself having a 3-hour conversation in Russian with some person on a train, or you're finding yourself running around a random bureau or a random like micro rayon, like a micro district in a city, and you actually know where you're going without using like your phone or anything. And I think that those are the moments that I really do like truly appreciate.
Yeah.
And those are also like the funnest too.
Yeah, I mean, there's amazing experiences, and it's in those sort of difficulties where you find yourself, as Dr. Blackwell said, having this sort of resilience and pulling it together and somehow managing to ask for directions from that marshutka, right? And having a conversation with someone. And these relationships that you make are really are really profound, I think, on the study abroad. So again, logistical worries shouldn't concern you. They're real and we want to work with you with them, but you should go. Are there any last questions? Are there any barriers with self-providers? Oh, Eve, legit question. Yeah, totally. WhatsApp. WhatsApp is your friend. WhatsApp is totally your friend. Telegram. There's some other one that I forget because I have COVID brain, but it's so easy to, yes, Signal. Like there's all these like ways that you'll talk to your family on WhatsApp or on iPhone or Skype or whatever. Cell phones are so easy there. Dr. Denner's right. Like it's really like, it is so easy. I would recommend getting an unlocked phone. Like I got an unlocked iPhone and then like literally the guy, like you go in and you're like, Yan is not, and he's like puts in the little card, like charges it up for you. And you're like, oh, дякую, spasiba, right? And it's super cheap and super great. And, you know, you'll be texting your Russian friends in no time. Yeah, so Dr. Denner saying, yes, Nova. One of the great things about the SRAS programs is they do a little bit more hand-holding, right? So you will get a phone, you'll have someone pick you up at the airport, even if they don't speak English. Like some of those things are more taking care of you. Jerome, no, you do not have to retake the class. It would be awesome because you'd probably like get more out of it, but no, that would be weird. That would be really weird. But you should also, Jerome, I will just say, really think about language. His program's amazing, but it's not a language program. So if in the Air Force you want to be using Russian, I would really suggest doing Russian or trying to tack Russian on to his program at the end, or do both, exactly. So do his program, it ends in Kiev, stay in Kiev for 6 weeks doing Russian. Easily worked out. Yes, Jonah.
Jerome, also, I'm not sure if you got my direct message, but I see you're in PICAP and they give you like, there's a very easy to get scholarship. It's $4,000. Go look at the PICAP website. It's incredibly simple to get. So keep that in mind.
Great. And so these guys also, just to you who have not been abroad, Jonah and Lois are resources for you. Definitely don't hesitate to reach out to them to ask sort of questions like you couldn't ask Dr. Fowler, right? You can ask them all the deets of their experiences, and feel free to reach out to me or to Dr. Denner or to Paula or to Dr. Planton. We really all believe deeply in study abroad, and you know, you saw on the PowerPoint, and I think all our careers are from study abroad, right? We all did this, we all had this experience, and we want this for you. So if there are, excellent, thank you, Lois. So if there are no further questions, I will say do svidaniya, as we say in Russian, or do побачення, as we say in Ukrainian, or cześć, as they say in Polish. So thank you so much for coming, you guys, and study abroad. Do it. I'm stopping the recording.